Good morning, good afternoon, good night, wherever you are. I'm super happy to see you here. I'm Felipe Hoffa, developer advocate for Snowflake, and we are live today with Pritul and Jakub. And I know sometimes I say names wrong, so please, Pritul and Jakub, what's your name and how should I say it?
Yeah, my name is Pritul, and I'm a product manager here at Snowflake.
Excellent.
My name is Jakub Puchalski. I'm a product manager here at Snowflake as well, working on native connectors.
Excellent. Both product managers at Snowflake, and today we're going to discuss and talk about the new Snowflake connector for Google Analytics, raw and aggregated. This is really cool. Let me check because we are live. We have a lot of people watching right now. So we have people watching on YouTube, we have people watching on LinkedIn. This is your time to say hello to our guests. Where are you today? I see it's night where you are, Pritul.
Yeah, I'm currently based in Warsaw. So I started working with Snowflake about an year and a half back, and then for a good amount of time I was based in Pune, India, and then I
Uh-huh.
recently relocated to Warsaw.
Nice. So you've been working for Snowflake from Pune, now from Warsaw. Do you like the new grounds?
I do. I think it's great out here. Yeah.
Nice. And where are you, Jacob?
I'm also located in Warsaw, and I'm originally from Poland.
From
This
Poland.
is where
Nice.
I joined Snowflake 2 years ago. And yeah, I think Pritul chose the wrong time in the year to relocate to Warsaw because when he came, it was freezing cold winter in here. So everything that is much better is still in front of him.
Nice. By the way, we usually by this time get a lot of comments on LinkedIn. People tell us where they are at. Sometimes LinkedIn fails, so that's why we have also the YouTube stream. And if anyone wants to ask questions, especially about the Snowflake connector for Google Analytics, uh, if LinkedIn is not working, you can send us the questions through YouTube. So to get started, what is this Snowflake connector for Google Analytics? Jacob, Pritul.
Well, let me start by, this is a native connector, right? So Snowflake is, since a while now, is offering so-called native connectors to external sources. This can be SaaS applications like Google Analytics or ServiceNow, or this can be databases, like, for example, Postgres, MySQL, etc. Right? So Google Analytics is one of those connectors that we're offering, and it allows you to get instant access to your Google Analytics 4 data in Snowflake Data Cloud directly in your account. That's in a nutshell what it is.
So make it easy to bring data, and especially I worked a lot with Google Analytics. I know how to export data from Google, bring it into Snowflake, but you're making this easy. And most of you, you mentioned you are product managers on the connector team. What does what does it mean to be a product manager at Snowflake on the connectors team?
I think it's pretty great. So we kind of love to build products that our customers could use and kind of simplify their overall use cases. So yeah, I think we are part of the connectors product management team, and like Jakub said, so we are building native connectors for Snowflake, which could help our customers to bring in data from either their SaaS sources or databases or streaming sources into Snowflake. Yeah.
Nice.
Yeah,
And
and being a
please.
product manager is really a lot about solving customer problems, right? So
Uh-huh.
what I love about this job, it's really designing a product that is kind of at the intersection of there's a problem for a customer to be solved, there is a technical challenge to be solved, there is UX, user experience, that we want to delight users with, and at the intersection of those three areas, we're trying to design the best possible product.
I love it. So you are designing the product, but this is all about what customers need. And this is part why we have a live chat here. So we are ready to listen to the customers, their questions. And again, I see a comment from Kamal on YouTube. Somehow we are not getting the comments from LinkedIn. If you're frustrated because you want to say something, switch to YouTube right now or wait until LinkedIn starts working. So I know You have a demo for us ready?
Yes, I do.
Yes. I heard a loud noise there, but um, before we go into the demo and the technical side of how this was built, any thoughts on why this was built? Like, yes, as you say, it's customer demand, but why
Mhm.
why are customers asking for this connector?
Yeah, I can take a stab at that, Felipe. So if you look at the overall landscape today, right? So the organizations, they kind of lack the overall flexibility in terms of where their Google Analytics raw data resided, right? And how do we bring basically that data into Snowflake? So till now, the customers were forced to kind of build complex ETL pipelines, which could kind of extract the data and into files and put it on stages and then bring it into Snowflake, right? The problem with this approach was that these pipelines are typically very costly to maintain and they are kind of insecure in a way, and then the maintenance of overall data pipelines is kind of prone to errors and failure. So which is why we decided to build the native connectors on top of Snowflake, which could help you bring data as easily as possible into Snowflake without actually the need for maintaining all of these pipelines. So kind of we kind of take this or provide this as a managed service, and then the data engineers don't have to worry about anything, so they just install the connector and we kind of manage everything in the background.
And I think
Nice.
also that the beauty of this particular connector and all the other connectors that we're building is that they're connecting directly to the source of data and bring it directly to your Snowflake account, right? There's no infrastructure in between. So there's no copying of data. I mean, this brings a lot of benefits in terms of simplified governance, security, better latency, etc.
Nice. And I already have a live questions before we go into the demo. This is through YouTube because that one is working. Hargovind wants to know what is the throughput expected out of these connectors. So you made everything easy, but we have a lot of data. Any thoughts on the throughput?
I think the highest throughput that I've seen so far was around 40,000 records per second. So I think it's pretty awesome. So as soon as with the raw data connector, you can either replicate data once per day, or you can go with the streaming option, which is kind of replicating data, syncing data between the source and your Snowflake account a lot more frequent, currently down to every 15 minutes, right? So we will be looking in the future to making it even more frequent, but basically every 15 minutes, it just takes a few minutes to replicate a large multi-million data set, which is amazing.
A few minutes is pretty amazing. And as you say, you have tried this and developed this with customers, so you are getting real life examples and it's working nice.
Yeah, the data that I was mentioning is based actually on real production data used by customers. Yes.
Yes, and you mentioned that we have the raw connector and the aggregated connector. Why do we have two?
Yeah, that's a great question, Felipe. So the aggregate, I mean, there are two kinds of data when we talk about the overall Google Analytics data, right? So either you have aggregated data, which is like a collection of selected matrix and dimensions, which is more or less sufficient for simple reporting. The raw data is kind of an event level granular data, that you need to bring in to Snowflake, maybe for mashing it up with other data sets. It could be, the search data or the ads data, or maybe doing some kind of advanced analytics. So for these two kind of data, we have two different connectors which can be used. The aggregate data connector, which is more suitable towards the aggregate data. And then if you want to bring in the event level raw data, so you could actually use the raw data connector.
Excellent. And we are going to have a demo of both. As you were saying, just to show you what I used to do before you show me how to do things right, this is a blog post I wrote back in 2021 where, yeah, I love Google Analytics. I've done a lot with it. I've done a lot with BigQuery. Now I'm working at Snowflake. I love Snowflake. How do I bring the data? The instructions that I gave people was like, go to BigQuery, find the table, export it to Google Cloud Storage, then, or instead of clicking, just write that line. That's how you get 1 day, 1 month, whatever of data. Then on Snowflake, you read it from Google Cloud Storage. This is step, step, step. We can automate some of this with Snowpipe, but now you're going to show me how to skip all of this and just have a pipeline that works, fixes mistakes, everything works way, way better. Is it time to
Yes.
go to the demo?
Yeah, maybe before we go to the demo,
Yes.
if you allow me to comment on this article, right? Because I saw this article, a long time ago, and I got really inspired by this. Like, hey, I mean, there must be a much better way to do this, right? So
Yes.
even if we do build a connector, it shouldn't be doing all of this. It shouldn't be extracting data from BigQuery to files, put it into a storage, and then send it over through storages and different hops of data. There must be a better way, right? And I think we found a fantastic technical solution, which is that our connector is using so-called BigQuery Storage API, right? So if you want to extract raw Google Analytics data today from Google Analytics, if you go into a Google Analytics 4 property settings, currently the only solution is that you can extract it to BigQuery. Right, but then once it lands in the BigQuery storage layer, right, there is a storage layer in there. There is this BigQuery storage API that the connector is using to directly connect to this data and bring it, from the source, and it just flies over HTTPS encrypted in transit and lands directly in your Snowflake account in a form of a table, right? So there is no infrastructure in between. And it's, like I said before, it's super efficient in terms of throughput. So radically simplified solution.
And we
Thank
are
you for simplifying this.
going
Pritul.
to show this in a minute, Felipe, how you can overall simplify this workflow, right? So you, with a few clicks, the connector would be ready and already ingesting the data into Snowflake.
Yes. Okay. Before we jump there, just to acknowledge that we have our live viewers. Perla is also saying, like what I was showing. They followed it and they unloaded into Snowflake using DBQ, GCS, and using Snowflake tags, loading raw data into Snowflake tables. It works, but Pritul, I think it's your turn to impress us.
Of course.
Let's do it the
So I'm
Snowflake
going to
connector
use,
way.
I'm going to use a recorded version of the demo. So I'll kind of pause through the workflow, just kind of talk over it. So yeah, let's take a look at it. So this is where the journey starts. So once you are in your Snowflake account, the applications are available on the marketplace, both the applications that I talked about, the raw data connector as well as the aggregated data connector. So all you need to do is you kind of need to go to the marketplace, and you, on the top hand side search, you can actually search for Snowflake connector for Google Analytics, and it will show you both the connectors. Alternatively, you could also go to browse data products. You can select amongst the provider as Snowflake, and then you should be able to see the connectors as well. So here I'm going to select the provider as Snowflake, and then you see both the raw and aggregated data connector in there. So let's do a demo for the raw data connector. It's pretty simple. You just need to click on Get, select the warehouse that should be used for installation, and then just wait. So it will take a few minutes to kind of install the application. And then once it is done, you can just click on Open, and then it should kind of take you to the interface. Now, this is how the interface looks like. So you would first land into a wizard, which will help you with the overall configuration process. So it kind of tells you the overall configuration steps that you need to do. The first one is actually the prerequisite screen. So you kind of need to make sure that some prerequisites are fulfilled, mostly on the GCP side. So things like, how your Google Analytics properties should be migrated to GA4 because that's what we support. How do you configure the BigQuery link, etc. Then the second step is all about the configuration. So you need to actually select the appropriate warehouse, which would be used for connector operations. You need to define a destination database and the schema where your data is going to land. And then you need to select a role, which would be used for the connector. So you can either select a new one or define a new one, or you can select an existing one. Now, this is where the authentication piece comes in, which is the next portion. So here you see you can either use a service account or OAuth for authentication. So we support these two authentication mechanisms. So I think the one that we prefer is the service account. So that's what I'm going to use for this demo. So you can here just use the service account credentials, and then you can just click on connect. Once you do that, it usually takes a few seconds to a few minutes for the overall configuration, and then that's where you're greeted with this screen, right? So now you can actually select the set of properties from which you need to sync the data. So let's click that and go on to the next step. Now, the connector would pull the list of all the relevant properties from which you need to pull in the data. So you can select, one or all of the properties that you want to pull in the data from. So it's pretty simple. You are presented with the list of all the GA4 properties, and now you're going to select these properties from which you need to pull the data, and then you can just click on Start Sync. Once you do that, the connector would automatically sync the data every 8 hours. And now that's pretty much it on the configuration side. So no further manual intervention needed. It would just pull in your data into Snowflake, and you can just query the table to see your data. What more, the data is pulled in the nested format, so it actually resides as a variant, but we have provided a view on top of it, which you can access using this command that you see at the bottom. So if you suffix it with an __ view, you would be able to see the flattened data as well. So customers don't need to do any additional steps in order to flatten the data. We automatically do it, and then they can just use this view to kind of access the flattened data. Once the data is in, then you can do all the magic on top of that data. For example, in this demo, we kind of used Snowflake Copilot, which is a private preview feature at this point in time. So Copilot is actually an LLM-powered assistant, which is tuned for text-to-SQL kind of use cases. So here I'm gonna, let's say, type in a query in the natural language. I need to find out something from my data. So I just type in my query, and then Copilot is actually going to turn it into a real SQL query, which will be used to query my data set. So now I'm just looking at the data. I see that there is a field called as device operating system, which has a mix of Windows, Mac, and all of those, OS. And now I really need to find out, how many rows are there in this table, for which the device operating system is actually Windows. So I'm just typing in a simple query in the natural language. So how many rows are there in where device operating system contains Windows? And then Copilot is actually going to turn it into a query, and then I'll just run that query to find out the relevant results. And now you just execute that query, and then it gives you the query. So you see how simple it was to get your data in using the connector, and then make use of that data. So yeah, that's how it looks like.
That's phenomenal. You're not only from now on getting all the data every 8 hours. The setup was pretty easy, and you finish with this. Not even writing the SQL queries. Copilot writes it for you. Wow, that's excellent. Let me see, what questions do we have live? This is a perfect question from Yogesh. Is there any plan for developing connectors which could work with different data visualization tools with an AI approach? I think you just showed the AI, but what do we think about data visualization?
So from a connector standpoint, I think right now we are focused on building connectors for different data sources. So for example, Google Analytics was one of the data source. So there are multiple data sources which we have planned. So we could obviously use one or more offerings to kind of visualize that data. But right now, as a connectors product management team, we are focused on building tools or connectors for different SaaS sources.
Yeah, but I think as a Snowflake, we offer kind of, would say, inbound connectors and outbound connectors, right? So indeed, our team is responsible, I would say, more for those inbound, so bringing data into the data cloud. But indeed, there are some connectors, or you can also call them drivers, that are used by different BI tools, right? That allow you to choose a BI tool of your choice. Even one of them could have sophisticated AI capabilities and make it connect to your data inside your Snowflake account. So I think we are offering a number of connectors for the most commonly used BI tools out there in the market.
Yeah, and we have great partners for visualization. The most important part is getting the data in. Once we get the data in one place, there's so much beautiful things we can do. And we're getting some comments from LinkedIn. So let me celebrate that LinkedIn is working. Well, is this only available in AWS? What's
So
the deal there?
it's available on AWS as well as Azure. So we support both of them. Yeah.
Uh-huh. And what's the plan? Because right now we're in public preview. Is it going
We
to
are
go?
currently in public preview, so we are going to go GA in sometime for now. So I think it's most likely going to be end of April. But again, it depends on a lot of factors. So yeah, not committing anything. Yep.
Yes, we don't promise dates, but I like that there is a date close enough. And yes, it's not only available in AWS, also in Azure, and hopefully in GCP eventually.
GCP is on the roadmap. It is.
Yes, but we live on customer feedback, so hopefully they're trying it and telling us if it's ready for GA. I have another question from Perla. What about getting data from SAP? Speaking of connectors.
There are two connectors, two Snowflake native connectors that are pulling data out of SAP. They were not built by Snowflake. They were built by our partners. So one of them is from a partner called SAP, another from a partner called Informatica. And they are specializing in SAP data, and they've used. So I think it's, again, if you like some technicalities, right? The Snowflake native connectors that we're building them on Snowflake native application framework. If you're not familiar with native application framework, I highly recommend you to read about it, right? So this basically allows building multiple various apps on top of Snowflake platform for various use cases, not just connectors. But as part of that native application framework, we also offer so-called connectors SDK. So if there is a partner interested in building a native Snowflake connector that works exactly the same way as the Google Analytics connector that Pritul has just shown, you're absolutely welcome to use the connectors SDK that is available publicly and build your own. So we've worked with a number of partners who actually started building their connectors on this framework, and they're also already available in the Snowflake marketplace. So I think there's already a few dozen of them out there.
Yes, and I love what you're saying here, because we also have a question of how do we decide if we do this with partners? Does Snowflake is it themselves, ourselves? But I love that we are using the same infrastructure. Like, people can place connectors on the marketplace. It can be developed by Snowflake, can be developed by a partner. Any additional thoughts on that?
Well, I would say there is a number of criteria, right, that we use to take a decision, whether it's going to be a first party or a third party connector. But I think the most important one is, what are the hottest data sources, the ones that have the largest demand for, and who is in the best position to build a connector for this one, right? So, for example, ServiceNow connector that is out there in the marketplace, or Google Analytics connectors that were built by Snowflake, we believe that we're in the best position to deliver the best possible product. But at the same time, for SAP, we knew that there are experts who've been working for more than 10 years or even longer on this, right? So they're absolutely in the best position to develop a fantastic product, and we're super happy to partner with them to do this on leveraging the connectors SDK and the native application framework, because they're using the same technology, the same standards, and ultimately bringing the same set of benefits.
I love it. Working with partners, there's so many data sources. There are data sources that are simpler, more complicated than others, bringing their expertise. having the marketplace where everyone can use this infrastructure to make it really, really easy to connect to and bring data from third parties. This is awesome. Let's talk a little bit about security. LinkedIn user wants to know. First, thanks for your presentation. Let's talk about security protocols and policies. How do we secure this flow? I saw that you started everything by telling Google that, yes, you're telling Google that Snowflake has permission to export this data, but what happens with this data then?
Yes, so I would say, it's a broad question.
Yes.
Right? There are different ways of addressing it at the different stages of replicating the data and synchronizing the data, right? So at the data source, we obviously are asking for the minimum necessary privileges, right? So we're not asking for admin access or for writing privileges, right? We really narrowed this down to the absolute minimum that allows us to read the data using API, right? So we authenticate ourselves with a secure protocol, service account, or an OAuth tool, and then we're getting a user consent. This is an explicit consent that gives us particular read permissions, and that's it. Nothing more, right? So that's one thing. Then the data, like I said, I mean, we're using APIs, right, to send the data. So the data is sent over HTTPS, and it's encrypted in transit. And then it lands directly in your Snowflake account. So it's not like the data is being processed through some additional processing layer or connector infrastructure in Snowflake. No, it's actually processed by a native application that lives and runs in your Snowflake account, right? So so the data, when it travels from the source that you own to the destination that you own, never leaves the premises of your ecosystem, of your secured, governed, right, boundaries of your landscape. And then when it lands in your Snowflake account, by default, none of the users of this account can see the data, right? So again, inside the connector, you control what is the role that has access to this data, and then you would be using the standard Snowflake role-based account access control, right? RBAC, to basically decide what users can access what parts of this data. So you have all the tools in your hands to manage that access.
Nice. I want to show you, we have a question about costs. So when I'm here at the marketplace, I can see that there are some free connectors like this. There are other connectors by partners. They can make them free, or they can make them, they may have an associated cost. And this is great for partners because Snowflake takes care of the billing. Now, with this connector, Perla wants to know, are there any additional charges for using this connector, or only the compute cost?
Yeah, so I think the connector usage is absolutely free of charge. So there are no charges for using the connector. So you can go to the marketplace, you can click on get, and that's how you get the connector in your account. So all the charges that you would be incurring for is mostly the warehouse usage charges, right? So when the connector runs, we basically saw in the demo that there is a operational warehouse that you need to use in order for the connector to run. So apart from that, there are no particular charges for this connector. So it's absolutely free. So you guys can try it out. And of course, the additional storage costs, I think those are pretty clear that they apply, but they are kind of outside of the connector charges. Yeah.
It's the beauty of the native apps. They work within the same model than Snowflake, the virtual warehouses, the compute, the services.
Yeah, I think
This
it's also
is-
worth mentioning that for the raw data, right? We are actually extracting it from BigQuery, right? So you may incur some charges on the BigQuery side, but they would be minimal. I mean, the BigQuery storage API that we're using, when you use it for reading data, it is free up to 300 terabytes per month, right? So I don't think you would ever beat that threshold, right? So you could incur potentially some egress cost from extracting it basically from GCP to your Snowflake account, depending on where it is located.
Yes, they're the costs on the GCP side and
Yes.
or the Google Analytics side, and that's your deal with them. But everything that Snowflake is doing, it's within the Snowflake compute
And
resources.
these are just Snowflake credits for using the warehouse. That's it.
Excellent. Let me see. What questions? We are almost on time, but if we have 1 minute, Hargovind is asking about unstructured data. I think this connector is mostly about Google Analytics data, but if people want to move unstructured data, do you have any thoughts?
Definitely not this connector. I think, yeah, this connector is tuned for bringing in your Google Analytics data into Snowflake. So this is not even a generic BigQuery connector. So we do bring in data from BigQuery, but it's kind of only tuned towards Google Analytics. So yeah, support for unstructured data is out of at least the purview of this connector. Yes.
Yeah, but there could be another connector for other type of data. This one is focused on analytics. Alexander wants to know if this takes care of the custom events in GA4.
Yes.
Yes.
Yes, basically, whatever is there. I mean, the original Google Analytics 4, I would say, schema, right? You can expand it, right, with custom events, with custom attributes, etc. It is then extracted in a fully raw format, including all that additional data, and the initial replication, right, using the API, is taking this extracted raw data exactly as it is. So it can be expanded. There can be nested fields. It can be very complex, but it is going to be replicated exactly as it is in a form of JSON, which is put in Snowflake into a variant column, right? And then like Pritul explained before, there is some initial, I would say, unpacking or flattening of this, right? But again, all these details are maintained. So you will be able to use this data. You can unpack it yourself and continue processing it as you like.
I like it. It's the power of bringing raw data, having the variant type, and building the views, materialized tables, dynamic tables, whatever we want on top of this. Just to start closing, I want to share some resources. Of course, there's this blog post, Unlock the Power of Your Marketing Data with Snowflake Connector for Google Analytics. Come and read more. The author, Jakub, so I'm glad that we have you here. People can also check this webinar that both of you hosted, Jakub and Pritul. So there you can go. This already happened, but then people can see the recording. Of course, you went deeper into the market dynamics, the connector, the live demo, customer references, more Q&A because we have so many questions. And of course, for any questions and setting this up, we have the documentation. And I see some no limitations, but I would love to know any closing thoughts, what people should do next, what kind of feedback do you love, where they can find you, what if they have more questions.
No, I think we would love the customers to try out this connector and kind of provide us with more and more feedback, which we can kind of use to enrich the product. So I think that's the basic philosophy that we follow in product. So kind of use the customer feedback to kind of enrich the product. So yeah, that's how I would summarize it. I don't know, Jakub, if you have any thoughts.
Absolutely. And, the call for action is, go to Snowflake Marketplace and give it a try, right? There's no license cost. You can install it instantly. And if you don't want to incur too much compute cost in the beginning, just replicate a single property, do it once per day and just give it a try and see how easy it is, see whether you can use the data successfully. And then basically, if you have any feedback, any questions, or you want us to bring more features, contact your Snowflake account team. right? And they will know where to find us. They will pass over the feedback, and we'll be glad to listen to it, because the connectors are currently in public preview. So before they become generally available, we're absolutely happy to continue expanding them and meeting your needs.
Yes, there you have it, people. Bring us your feedback. We love it. We love your live questions. We love that Pritul and Jakub came here today. Can I answer a completely unrelated question from Perla? Because I cannot stop myself from answering this one. Perla is working with unstructured data, images. They are in Snowflake, and how to generate URLs to access those images to use in Tableau. I wrote the blog post just for that. So here I'm generating pictures inside the Snowflake, and I'm able to send them in an email. And how do I put them on an email? I have everything in this blog post. So Perla, please check this blog post. Sorry for the unrelated to that, but it's super fun to create pictures and send them and make them available and make them supported. So with that, thank you very much. I love doing this. I love being live. And I think it's time for our bird to dance us off. Thanks a lot for everyone watching.
Thank
Thank
you.
you.